Good rest day, working moms, and welcome back to So This Is Motherhood. In today's episode, I am going to be addressing toxic in-laws, boundary stomping in-laws, and how this all pertains to my Christmas of 2019 from hell. Stay tuned. Working moms, and welcome back to So This Is Motherhood. Before I jump into today's video, I just want to say, if this is your first time tuning in, I just want to say thank you so very much for tuning in and deciding to spend your Sunday with me. And before I jump into today's video, I also want to take a quick moment and give a brief shout out to my girl Adriana Roca. She runs AR Texas Treasures on Facebook and Instagram. There's her handle for you guys so that you guys can check her out on Instagram. She made this amazing custom sweatshirt for me because it's about two things that I am very passionate about. As you can see, it says breastfeeding for all. And I'm going to do a 360 so you can see what the back says, okay? That's right. It says circumcision for none. And as you can see, I had three sexes. Male, female, and intersex. Now, I'm just going to put it out there for you guys right now. I am an intactivist. I believe that all children, whether they're male, female, or intersex, have a right to grow up with all their body parts until they are 18 and able to make that decision for themselves. I am a firm believer in bodily autonomy and genital integrity. And, of course, I am a firm believer in his body, his choice, her body, her choice. It's just a passion of mine. I slowly reached this way over time. I personally love to educate and help out in giving information about routine infant circumcision and how it is not only painful but damaging but also unnecessary and in some cases deadly. 10 days before I gave birth to baby Virgo, a little boy down in Texas, bled to death from being circumcised, and he was 11 days old. He passed away during Hurricane Harvey, 2017, and my heart still aches for that family. Another child taken away unnecessarily due to an unnecessary cosmetic genital surgery. So with that, I want to jump right into this video about boundary stomping in-laws and toxic in-laws and how it led to my Christmas of 2019 from hell, all because of my beliefs. So I want to reiterate, believing that all babies are born perfect and that they have a right to their own bodies, I truly believe isn't just a belief system. I believe it's a matter of human rights. We live in the land of the free and the home of the brave, of course. And to be free, one must truly have freedom over one's body. So a little background story for those of you who are just tuning in, of course. When I went to nursing school, I did watch 2 circumcisions, and it was a very, very horrible, inhumane experience. You never forget the sound of foreskin being ripped off of a baby. Like, the doctor gave a local anesthesia and didn't even wait. She just cut and ripped and grabbed, and it was horrible. You never forget that sound, and you never forget the sound of the screaming baby. The second baby that I witnessed went into shock from being circumcised. I think he was mostly in shock from the extreme pain of the lidocaine shot that was, administered into the base of his penis. So after watching that and just realizing that the doctor didn't say anything afterwards, the second doctor anyway, about cleanliness or lack of it, or now he'll be, free of STDs and UTIs and all of these common things that we're told here in America, all he said was now that he would have a beautiful penis that a girl would want to play with. And I was taken aback because at that time, I was dating a boy or young man, I should say, who was intact, and I had no issues with his penis whatsoever. I thought it was really cool that he wasn't like everyone else. And when he said that, the doctor, I was like, wow, that's really culturally biased. All penises are just penises. They're goofy looking whether they're intact or they're cut. And I also had a background still have a background, I should say, as being a state-tested nurse assistant. And, you know, my 80-year-old men that are intact, they're not being circumcised, you know, from all these infections and, like, you know, foreskin attacking them in their sleep and all this other nonsense that you hear. So I just put it in my mind from that moment forward that because of that experience, I would never allow a boy of mine to be circumcised. And I didn't care what anyone said. It was wrong. And I that stayed with me, and that is why baby Virgo is intact, despite the arguments that I had to endure with from his cut father. So, of course, as I explained before, as I slowly, you know, started learning more about the history of circumcision, I just really enjoyed educating because that's just part of my background from going to nursing school. So I always try to educate with anyone that I see, whether it be a stranger or a family member that's pregnant with a boy, about how they really need to dive deep into the harms and the history of circumcision. It's truly one of those things where the more you research it, the more you're against it. And I will list all the what I believe are truly helpful and educational links in my description below for all of you working moms out there who may be pregnant with a boy or not. I don't believe that you have to just be pregnant with a boy to be a firm believer in bodily autonomy and genital integrity for all. And I truly do mean that. Like, if I ever have a baby girl, I would never pierce her ears. You know, my parents I believe my mother wanted to pierce my ears, but my father was against it. He said it should be my choice. So, you know, if we respect a girl's choice to her own body, I definitely think it should apply to boys as well. So, and pertaining to how this all leads up again to my Christmas of 2019 from hell, you have to have a little bit more background story about my husband. My husband is, for those of you who don't know, a 6'1", black-haired, red-bearded ginger. And he was raised in the trailer park, and he lived there for a long time. I think like 15, 20 years in the trailer park before he moved out. And he does not come from a very loving background. His parents divorced when he was young. His father was an alcoholic who beat him and my sister-in-law when he was drunk. And there's a lot of emotional trauma and physical trauma that, you know, that he needs to work through on that. But that's a video for another time. He's always been the black sheep of the family. Him and my sister-in-law have been, because they are my father-in-law's children, who is also the black sheep in his family. And if you guys know anything about toxic in-laws, abusive relationships amongst families, dysfunctional families, the black sheep stays with that child forever and extends into their offspring. It's a generational curse, if you will. And so my husband has told me some horror stories about how his cousins and his aunts have treated him. And his sister over the years, you know, they were always very poor, and his aunts and uncles were always very rich. So, they got the scraps at Christmas. They had to sit and watch their cousins open all these expensive presents, all these ridiculous amounts of presents. And their cousins were always better than them because at least they weren't Eddie's children. So, hindsight being 2020, I didn't realize what all that entailed. But my husband assured me that regardless of how they feel about him, they would never mistreat our children. Well, in Christmas of 2018, I saw their true colors. At that time, baby Virgo was just just newly turned a year. He was about 15 months old, and my stepson was 8 at the time. And they never include us in family activities, random get-togethers, random dinners, family vacations, and everything else like that. We're also the last to know when great-grandma is in the hospital because she suffers from CHF, and, of course, kidney problems. So she sometimes goes into kidney failure fairly regularly, and, she can't breathe, and they never really tell us when she's in the hospital. So their excuse for not getting my son as many gifts as his cousin and my stepson as many gifts as their cousin is because, well, we don't come around, so they don't know our children. It's really not that hard to buy for a 1-year-old boy and an 8-year-old boy. And if you really wanted to get to know them, I feel like they would call and ask when we had my stepson, which they know we have him. Well, I shouldn't say that they know. a couple of the family knows that we have him every Wednesday and every other weekend. And we have him practically every weekend in the summer. So there's been multiple chances where they could call and ask if we had my stepson so that they could, be around him and get to know him so they could talk and things of that nature. So it's wrong to blame the parents that you don't want around anyway for why you can't give the kids as many gifts as you give the grandkids. Now, these are my cousin-in-laws that now host Christmas. The one cousin believes that she is the matriarch of the family, when in reality it is my sister-in-law, but we don't let her know that. We just let it go to her head and think that she is the matriarch of the family. And she has 2 grandchildren, and they literally, in Christmas of 2018, opened 20 gifts in front of my son and my stepson, and they probably got 2 or 3 gifts each. And every Christmas day, because we always have Christmas Eve at, the in-laws' house, every Christmas day, her grandchildren come over. So as far as I'm concerned, she could save a few of those gifts, for Christmas Day. And that year, her oldest daughter, they invited her oldest daughter's coworker and her 2 children, soon to be 3 children, over, and they managed to get gifts as well. So I call bull hockey that they could buy for complete strangers, but not their family. So last year, I made it very clear to my husband that I was not happy that he is insisting that we continue to go over to his cousin's house, considering how they treat me. And I told him how they have been treating me very oddly ever since I got pregnant with baby Virgo. And they were saying very hurtful things to my sister-in-law behind our backs about how, well, since my husband could barely afford child support for his first son, then my sister-in-law should be trying to take our child and raise him because we were clearly too poor to raise another child. And that just really resonated with me and really stuck with me because it really hurt. I wanted my son to be around all this love. He has all these cousins that live close, and all my cousins were all scattered throughout the state. I don't see my cousins that much, and and a couple of them are married and they have their own lives. They just live too far away for them to be close the way I was with my cousins. So I wanted my son to be close with his cousins. And here I'm realizing this is never going to happen because I married the black sheep of the family. And I'm also the only black person in the family. So that's a whole nother topic. But yes, there is hidden undertones of racism and prejudice, I believe, from my in-laws. Because when they first met me, they decided to make it known that they have no prejudices against black people, even though a black man killed their cousin. Not really something you tell someone you just met. Just saying. And then to question if I like quote-unquote hillbilly food. I like all food. Just because I'm black doesn't mean I'm prejudiced against food. You know what I mean? So, again, I didn't want to go to Christmas. I went anyway. So I was like, I'll just go out with a bang. Because after I gave birth to baby Virgo, 2 of the cousins gave birth also to boys. And I tried to educate them calmly and non-emotionally about circumcision because they both wanted to breastfeed. And, the La Leche League has over 30 years of evidence that proves that intact boys breastfeed much better compared to their cut peers because there's no trauma involved with genital cutting when the boy is intact. And they were both cut anyway, and it really hurt me because it's one thing to just be culturally brainwashed. It's another for someone to tell you, hey, this isn't necessary, and you do it anyway because you think you own your child or because the father wants it done. So every year for Christmas Eve, you come in your pajamas. So I came in my pajamas, and then one of my pajamas was a Star Wars flannel pajama pants and a t-shirt, an Intactivism t-shirt that said nobody wants less penis. And I deliberately wore it to make people uncomfortable and for me to stand in solidarity with my cousins who were cut. Because the one cousin who is cut has extreme colic and he's never happy. And he has no chill. And I know it's partially because of just the trauma that he endured. And he also has a lot of birth trauma. But again, that's another topic for another time. So I wore the shirt in protest and solidarity. And I am still breastfeeding baby Virgo. We're 2 years in. Woo! And I didn't want to hide it.
anymore, despite the fact that I knew that it would cause a little bit of an issue. So I breastfed him, and you really couldn't see anything, and I got kicked out of the living room literally in 2 minutes. And the hostess, who thinks that she is the matriarch in our family, deliberately did it in such a way so that my husband wouldn't hear her, so that she wouldn't cause a scene. So I was going to cause a scene, but I decided not to. Now, if she had called me out in front of everybody and embarrassed me, I definitely would have. But, you know, she made it very clear that this is her house and this is her rule. So I went to the back room and I breastfed baby Virgo, who was very sick and very clingy at that time, mind you. So, needless to say, I was a 24-hour cafe. And, so, apparently everything that I did offended everyone, and they all complained about me to the hostess, and let it be known that if I showed up at Christmas this year, that I would not be welcome, and that physical harm may come to me. So, again, just dealing with all of that. I knew what I was doing, but if you're gonna, kick me out of Christmas and threaten physical harm to me because of my beliefs, and, breastfeeding, hashtag free the nipple, and because I believe that children have a right to their own bodies, that says to me that they've had an issue with me for a long time, and it probably started because I didn't invite them to the wedding because it was a cost efficiency issue, or hidden undertone just being that I am black and I'm here permanently and I married the black sheep of the family. Whatever their issue is with me, I don't care, but I feel like that is definitely extreme to be just offended by how I parent to the point that you don't want me around. So that is very toxic, and for them to tell my husband that he is welcome and my children are welcome to Christmas this year, but I am not. Absolutely not. You are not going to disrespect me and still think that you have access to my children. It's not going to happen. I'm their mother. Yes, I did not physically give birth to my stepson, but my stepson is very attached to me. We have an amazing bond. I have been with him since he was 4, and he is 9 now. Okay, we have an amazing bond, and it's not going to change. And if it definitely has caused a rift between Daddy Gemini and I, and we are working through it. But I have no shame for standing up for what I believed in. The fact that they've resorted to that extreme reaction just says to me everything that I need to know about my in-laws. And best believe my children will not be around them, especially my mixed child. He's not going to be subjected to that underlying and blatant racism and prejudice. And I grieve from him. I thought he was going to have an amazing, loving family, and he doesn't. But I'm going to make it right, and I'm definitely going to be diving into the spirit of Yule and really celebrating Christmas for a week at a time. The 10, 12 days of Christmas, but not quite. So we have meet him, baby Virgo, and my stepson, and myself. We are all going to have an amazing Christmas Eve. Free of toxicity, because it is 2020 and it is a new year and a new decade and a new me, and I will not subject my children to such blatant prejudices. Now, if my husband wants to keep that relationship with his toxic family, he is more than welcome to do so, but I will not be put in a position where I am uncomfortable, and I will not subject my children to that. They don't deserve that. They are children, they are innocent, they are blameless. And they deserve to be surrounded by love and not disregard. So that is why I said that was my Christmas of 2019 from hell, because that's a horrible thing to realize, that you thought that you were loved, and here you really aren't loved. So sorry to lay it on so heavy on you guys, but that's what happened, and this is part of motherhood. Setting boundaries for you and for your children and protecting your children. I didn't fully understand what it meant when people said they were mama bears. Now I fully understand. And I'm just grieved that it took me so long to realize this. But I'm glad that I caught it early. And now I can protect my children from unnecessary heartache. I know I can't save them from all unnecessary heartache, but this one I have control over, and I'm definitely going to do right by them. So I hope some of you guys out there who've been following me, who may be dealing with toxic in-laws, fully understand what I'm going through, and I hope this video was encouraging to you about setting your boundaries with your family and protecting your children, and not being afraid above all else to stand up for yourself. So if this video was helpful, I hope you can give it a like, and feel free to subscribe. I post pretty much every Sunday here on YouTube. If not, it's usually up that Monday. And of course, you have my handle up there in that corner for Instagram. I post there pretty much every day, and I'm still on layoff, so it's going to be mostly about motherhood for now until I get back into the grind of work. And of course, anything that you guys want to see is in my highlights there on Instagram. So thank you so much for spending the Sunday with me. Until next time.